Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a look. We're just getting the HDMI cable, so that'll come back. We're going to look at Visual Studio. So if you've got Visual Studio and you start Visual Studio, I've got various versions of Visual Studio in here. So I'll use Community 2015. I also have like Ultra 2013 and a whole bunch of other ones. So if we go to Visual Studio, and I'll just go to here and go Add, Window Capture, Create New, and Dev Start Picture. Okay, and move that down. Yep. Aha, we have cable coming. So in Visual Studio, one of the things that you'll find is plug in there, and I plug in there, and I turn that on there, and delete it. Right, okay, so Visual Studio, so File, New Project. Okay, so as you can see, there are lots of options. Now, most of you guys would have had clicked the console and then gone empty, right? Because build it from an empty project. I have all these templates and I never read any of them, right? If you actually go through and say, okay, blank app, okay, Universe Windows DirectX app, DirectX 12 app, Windows Console, Microsoft Foundation classes, Win32 project, empty project, Direct 11 project, unit test. DLL. Ooh, DLL. That's a dynamic linked library project. Hey. Oh, and there's a static library, right? So I've got a static library project or a DLL project, which are both project templates. These will set up all of the compile options for you when you start the project, right? If you start with a blank project, you then have to go through and set all of those yourself, right? So by picking one of these two. So what do we prefer, a dynamic linked library or a static library? We'll do a DLL? Okay, so we do a DLL, and its name is DLL1. I think maybe maybe we should call it something like, Simon Mathlib. Okay? Mathlib. Yep, Simon Mathlib. And create him directory for solution. Now, one of the things to do is it's useful when you're building a library to build both in Visual Studio to have the solution and have the library as one project and have your test of the library as a separate project. So you can build the library and then build the test and run the tests against the library, so you've got those separate, right? So we can create. And fingers crossed, it's settings for developers. Okay, so install apps. So this is so for some reason it's brought up my for developers settings. Okay, and we can just close that. Okay, so as you can see here, it's created a whole bunch of stuff in here. So it's got this Mathlib, and I have my DLL home. So this is the API entry point for DLL main. Switch URL reason for so it's showing you kind of the calling structure for the DLL. And I have include the PHC, which is just it's a Win32 DLL, right? So when we build the DLLs, we have these. Now, those are the header files, basically the standard ones. My actual library is in here and in my H file. Right? Now they both have the pragma once in there. You guys are comfortable with pragma once for so you avoid multiple inheritance. So with creating a math library. Now basically I create a function, so let's call this function is it returns int, it is called Simon add which takes an int a and an int b and does a, and so return a minus b.
Simon's way of adding.
Simon's way. Simon says add. No. Haha, you didn't know. So no. Maybe I should return plus. Otherwise, it could get me. Okay. So Simon add. We'll just make it the normal add. And you know, I should probably add some comments here. So this I will add, because I want it to be in the library headers and be able to be seen, right? I'll want to add it in here as well as a prototype. Okay, so, oh, no, I think it's that's just that in the prototype. Doesn't have the implementation. So, so now, in theory, I have a absolute minimal function call. So if I now build, I can't start directly, so thank you for telling me that. I actually didn't mean to hit start. I meant to actually go to build and build solution. Now it should.
Yeah, build success.
It did say build success, but it was down the bottom here, wasn't it? Yeah, okay, so build success. So it's now built a library, right? So there is now a library file there. So now I have to look at how do I use that library file. And this is why in here, this DLL creation, if we have a look at our actual kind of project settings, we can look for the output. So general, where is it putting the output? So one of these is, so here you can see the additional directives. So project directories, so that's the includes. Where is the output? General. I'm looking for where it saves it to. Okay, we'll go into the. So solution properties. So project dependencies, code, lib, debug source, configuration properties, configuration, build. Okay, so we've got the externals. Yep. If we go and path, I can find the solution path. I can go to that, go copy, and go here. Oh. Right, so it's put it under the wrong place, but that's okay. So under debug, I should have a mathlib, and now I have here deep in my directory, and sorry the people in the stream aren't seeing this because they're only seeing the thing, but deep in my directory there is under testing Simon mathlib debug Simon mathlib a Simon mathlib.dll, right? So I now actually have a DLL which I can't show you because I have to get the screen larger. Nope, I can't. So that file there is a Simon mathlib DLL. Okay, so if I want to include the DLL and I refer to it, then I need to say, well, that's my debug DLL output, and it's 111K because it's quite large, right? If I was saying, well, you know, I actually want to use this not as a debug DLL, which has all of the debug information around all the headers and all the and wraps it all so it knows where errors come from. I can also go to this and go into here and go into release mode and go build solution. One build successful. And if we go back here, I can then go up to the release and go in here and find the release DLL is 7K. Okay, so the debug 111K, the release 7K. Okay, so you can see why it might be better to give out the release version of the code rather than the debug version of the code, right? Just for a single line of code, this seemed like a 111K seemed quite large. Okay, so now we've got these two DLLs. It would be neat to be able to use those in my code, right? So now I need to say, okay, well, DLLs, right? When I use a DLL, I have to get the header and then compile the DLL in to, like, either I put it in the Windows directory or I have it in the same directory as the executable, right? You guys are familiar with that challenge? Okay, well, you know, I've got a very simple header file and I've got a DLL. So let's create a new project under this solution, which is going to use my mathlib. So I go to under here, new project, add new project. And let's say we're not going to do a DLL, we'll do an empty project. Actually, no, we'll do a Windows console application. Right? So we'll do a simple console application which will allow me to use my add for my DLL to add numbers together. So let's say call this testing Simon add. And I'll put the project under the same place, which is okay, and then put it there. Then go, right, what do I want? Console application, next. Console application, I don't really like pre-compiled headers, and I don't like security development lifecycle checks. But we'll just go console and finish. And here you can see, even under application type, it has Windows application, console application, DLL, static library. So even though I came from this, from saying I want a Windows thing, it would go, oh, are you sure you don't want a library? Because, you know, it's just here, I could just make it a library. So console application. So now I have two projects. Have you guys you've done this two project thing in Visual Studio? A little bit, maybe? Okay. So now I have a project. Now, I can actually set this up to be like a makefile, right? Where I can make my compilations of my testing project rely on successful compilation of the previous project, right? So you can set those triggers up. I'm not going to go into that at the moment. But if I go into my main here, I go, well, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go hash include and my header file is Simon mathlib, so Simon mathlib.h. Yay. Now, if I want to include, so here within the project, my header files, I'm going to have to tell it where that header file is, right? So there's two ways to do this. You guys know you can usually you just copy the header file into your project. Yeah, that's what you mostly do. You could go and refer to it somewhere else. You could actually go and find the header project in your Windows library, right? So when you use like .h files with the diamond brackets around them, you guys are used to using these ones, right? Yeah. That's because that's a header file somewhere in the libraries, next to the libraries, right? Because the DLL came in with a bunch of header file. Each library came in with a header file, so I could just, if I was putting it into the Windows repository, I'd be throwing it in there, right? The other way is you say, well, okay, it's a .h file, but this is going to be coming from somewhere, So let's say it comes from my library. So under my project settings, and I go to my C++, my not precompiled headers, additional include directories. So edit this and add one and go to it. Now it is actually kind of one up in mathlib and under I think it's there actually. Select folder and go OK. So I'll just check in my actual, if I go up and nope, where is it? It's under mathlib here, and there it is. So it is under mathlib. Yep, okay, so and I think that's what I got there. Mathlib. Now if I was being clever, I could go, well, you know, I don't like that. What I should actually do is just say, well, this is 2 up from where I am, so I could just do ... and actually make it a relative path. I'll leave it like that so I know that it works, because it does take a little bit sometimes to check where you are. So we'll just leave it like that. Okay, so that now gives me my .h file. Now if I, now I should be able to go return Simon add of 6,5. Yay! Yay! So I've got the header file there, but now when I compile it, I should, right? Now, if I hit start here, Visual Studio will actually compile the one which is black here, so I can actually set this one to be my default project. So set as startup project, so I'll set that so when I hit this it'll just run. So if I do that, it'll go, oh, linker library problem because you haven't put the DLL somewhere I can find it. Right, so that's what I was expecting it to do, was to give me an error because I hadn't included my library. So let's go in. So 2 ways. One, I can put the DLL next to the executable. Right? So if I go and have a look, I could say, well, okay, my executable, and you know, this is not the prettiest way of doing it. Right? The pretty way of doing it is actually installing the DLL into my Windows directory. Right? So I'll do the hacky way first, and then I'll show you the better way, right? Just so we can see it working. If I go into my lab testing, and I go into my library, and I go into release, and I go into debug. Where is my DLL gone? Ah, right, it went up. Visual Studio is placing it at a higher level, right? So if I go in here, it's in here. So this is my release DLL. I can copy that. And you know, because I'm copying it, it means that it won't be updated properly, right? So I copy and paste it in. I'm losing the whole linking thing going on. So I'll show you this works just so that I can. That's right. It will be putting it in here. Nope, under this one. Where did it put my exe? Should be under testing. Release. Or did it put it under here as an exe? Where did it put the exe for this program? Testing Simon add.exe. Where did that go? Testing, MATLAB. There's the release and the debug. Didn't put it under there. Nope. Okay.
There's a folder testing Simon.
This one.
Yeah.
It's not in there. So it must have put it somewhere. Let's go and have a look for the settings of where it's actually putting the executable. So properties and directories, executable directory, where the okay no those are the executables. I need the output directory. Where are you putting your output? Command line. So it should be under this here. Copy, right? So oh. Okay, it should have been putting it there. Under method testing Simon add. Should be testing Simon add in here.
Did you build it properly after the errors?
Okay, let's. Okay, so let's. Right. All right. So unresolved external symbol. Right. So it's I've got to add the DLL before I can build an executable to put the DLL next to. So yeah, that's why it's failing, because it didn't build the full executable.
To get the folder and the location for everything.
But if we go to properties, I'll do what you do when you find this linker error. Is normally what you do is you go, oh, okay, I've got a DLL that's missing, so I need to go to the linker and go additional libraries. So the input, where is it? Ignore, no, where is my additional libraries? Additional dependencies. Where are my DLL libraries? Linker. Edit. So I'm going to go ahead in Simon. Though well, yes, the DLL will come in here, I think. So lib math lib.dll and then go OK. And then I need to give it a path, which is delay loading DLLs. No. General, which is libraries, additional library directories, and then go this one and go edit, and then go add and find and go up to the math library, and it's under, we'll use the release version, and that's the library it's in, and then go select library and then go OK, and then go apply and then go OK. And then let's go for build solution. Right. So some bytes have been replaced with Unicode substitution characters while loading file. Testing math blah 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 blah. With Unicode UTF-8 encoding, saving the file will not preserve the original file contents. Okay, didn't really need to see the file, so no. Okay, so invalid or corrupt file. So it's not liking my DLL file that way. So I need to actually go, and I'm usually do this with stag libraries, which are libs, but okay, so if we go back to project settings, go project settings, so rather than making it like a dependency, which is what I did here, that's under linking input. So I think it's trying to include that as a lib file. So I'll get rid of that one and then just go OK, and go apply and then OK, and then build. That should give me the unresolved externals. So I think in here let's go to this and go okay. Right, building library, walk through, create your own dynamic library. That's the one I'm looking for, because Microsoft do nice things like give you proper documentation. So let's turn that on. Okay, so create the DLL, expose the functions, variables. Right, so prerequisites, we've done all of those, whether we're not on the latest 2017 version. Build it, build it, build it. Step through. Preprocessor definitions. Right, so math library exports. So here you can see it's got this has got the precompiled headers. So in the Windows desktop, select dynamic link library. So this is what it automatically did. It automatically sets all of these things for us, so it creates a DLL. But what's interesting is if you step through here, create a DLL project in older versions of Visual Studio, which is what I just did. So create finish, DLL, did that, math.h, pragma once, did that. It then suggests, that was the extern C. So one of the things that you want to do is it's using ifdefs for a whole bunch of stuff there, which would be nice. The extern, because I didn't tell it that this code is external, it didn't know to go and look for external code. So the actual problem here is in my library code here, this one, actually the .h. Where's my, there. This would need to be said, well actually it's an extern. And then it says, oh, you haven't implemented that extern. So I say, well, okay, I'll implement the extern. So extern in C++ tells you this code won't exist for now. So don't go looking for it, right, when you compile. Right, that's why it wouldn't compile. So now when I build, to build the library, I need to go here and go build. And I'll just, yeah, that's okay, that's gone back to what it needed to be. So that is now one successful. Now when I go to here and I go resolved. That's because I copy and pasted the header. Oh no, did I? Yes, I did copy and pasted the header in. Well, I'll go and check. So header files. No, I was using the mathlib library, should come from that one, should be that one, and if I close that one and go into this project and go there, I have this one and it should be there. And so build clean, clean the solution, do cleaned, and then right, still giving me my link unresolved. So I don't think you need to, though. I'll do what you're supposed to do, which is you go back to your walkthrough and say, okay, so I need the externs. I then implement that with unsigned, and they've got the Fibonacci, and they've got so they've got the extern math library API, because they've got a FDF library, so they've got like the namespace included, right? So this is basically doing a namespace for a math library. So given that we're following walkthrough, I'll copy all of that in and say, okay, well, you want me to do it that way? I'll do it that way. So, and they have a math library API, so I'll grab a math library API, and the extern and says that's the namespace for that. So you see here, this is all the FDF exports, deal with it, and extern C on the math library APIs and then do a void function, math function, and then takes you through all of the DLL specifics, DLL exports and imports. So to add implementations to the DLL, you then take the libraries, including the .h, and here it's not externaling these now, so I think I can go in, and if I make sure I've done the bits up here, so math library, make sure that I haven't missed one of the key features up the top here. Nope. Header file, math library header file. Yep. Break me once, that's all good. Yep, okay. So if I go back into my code and go back into here, I think I've save, and will this go up to here and compile? So build rather. One successful. Okay, yep. So all two functions were compiled because no usable IPD object from previous compilation was filed. Finished generating code and generated DLL. Right. Okay. So it supposedly generated the DLL code. So now, if we have a look at the walkthrough, it says, okay, that's great. You've generated DLL code. You've compiled it. It says one successful, create a client app. I go through, that's what I did there, and step through. So, you know, this is Windows Microsoft directory, so turn the Firefox back on. So you guys could go back and follow this, right? So there, so additional include directories was, and when I said relative, that's them doing it relative. So you could do relative directories. So additional include directories that I set, and I included the .h, and additional include directories, how to add your DLL imports. So additional dependencies, math library lib. Ah, right. Yes, that's what I was missing. So I've got to add the lib file as well as the DLL. Okay, that's, yeah, so I understand what I was missing now. So if we're here, when I compile this one to run it, it will still give me an issue saying, well, you still don't have those links resolved. So under the project settings here, the additional dependency I need is actually Simon math lib.lib. Okay, now, and it is default, and I'll need to go to add additional library directories. So if I go and have a look, you'll find I should be able to see that there is under here a DLL and a lib. Right, so next to the DLL there was a lib created. So I now, and I think if I've got my directory correct, I'm looking for both. So now let's see if, fingers crossed, woot. Right, so now I've built an executable. It went, oh, you've got the library. I'll grab the library. I'll include all that code. Now where's the DLL? Right, so this is now at a point where the code execution cannot proceed because simonmathlib.dll was not found. Restarting the program may fix this problem. So I say, well, where's the DLL? Well, the DLL's over there. Now, because this is an executable, I could either put the DLL into the Windows system, or I can put the DLL next to it. If you're building a proper deliverable, you would package it and package the DLL and have the DLL install itself into the Windows Win32 directory. Right? That's what your installer does when you create an installer in Visual Studio. It saves the DLLs into the Windows directory. So at the moment, because creating an installer is a problem for next week. I will copy that one and put it next to where I actually have testing math lib release. Now I have an exe there, and now I can place my DL next to my executable. Now when I double click this executable, it should flash up and disappear because I've got no aha. The code execution cannot proceed because VC runtime 140 app.dll was not found. Reinstalling. Okay, there's another DLL I've got to add. Let's just see what happens when I run it from here. Yeah, okay, so now I've got to get the visual, because I haven't made the program as a deliverable. I've not added the Visual Studio, you know, it's the kind of runtime library for Visual Studio. So I've got to add that DLL. Right, great. Okay, but if I take that now, you guys can remember what that's called? VC runtime 140 app. Now, because we're doing proper Visual Studios, we should be able to do... will it tell me here that it was going to do that to me? Post DLL events... X copy, yeah, so copy the DLL to post build events. So one of the things that it has here is this is what you do when you've built. It copies the DLL to somewhere else, right? So you can actually set it up to, this is one of those trigger things. It can automatically copy the DLL places, and that's what it suggests to do. It's not suggested, oh, by the way, I will give you an error because you won't have the Visual Studio runtime DLL. I've got to then go and find that runtime DLL. So VC runtime 140 DLL. I'll go to Microsoft Answers. Okay, so int k. Why am I buying a Surface Pro? So, right, download, and I think I'm the 32-bit. We'll do that one. Save file. Right, I didn't realize that I had to install the runtime. So again, this is an example of I don't have the Visual Studio runtime on my system, and so it needed to, now where did it go? Okay. Where did it go? I thought, okay, I agree, install. Okay.
This is why I make web apps.
This is why you make web apps, rather than do this in a nice freaking coding environment where you got students watching you and you're making all these mistakes and okay. What I could potentially do is change my target environment from being VC 140 to being the one I have currently installed, right? Because I said I've got multiple Visual Studios installed. One of the older Visual Studios is obviously my current runtime environment, and so it's complaining that you can't set up a new runtime environment. So if I go to Properties and I go to the General, instead of Visual Studio 15 140, if I pick 13 120, I should be able to apply that and then go OK. And let's see what happens now. Okay, what I might have to do is also compile my library against the 120, right? because if I build that and I just check the properties of it and change it to, that's still the 140. So if I change that, okay. So before, inherit from parent, okay. Okay. Properties. Code analysis. Where is, oh, Visual Studio 14s. That doesn't look promising. MATLAB, Win Library, Release, Platform. There, I was doing the Win32. Startup project. So single project, you can have multiple startup projects. Project dependencies. This is where you create the dependencies between the solutions. Code analysis settings, the debugs are all in Visual Studio 14. Okay. Arg. This, yeah. Okay. I can do a slight, so that won't let me install it, right? But what I can do, and it's dirty and hacky and cheap and nasty, but just like that had the proper way of doing it, I can just download the DLL, because it is just a DLL. And there are multiple versions of it. So we'll grab the top one. And I'll open it. Should just have. It shouldn't be a hack. Okay. So if I copy that and I paste it into the directory here.
I think you need to
I
extract
think you
it.
copied the name of the file.
Right. There we go. So let's just press play.
Do you think you need the underscore app in the, might be the wrong DLL file?
It could be the wrong DL file. Let's see how picky it is.
Well, unable to start.
That's probably
Maybe it's a
because
different file.
it could be a different file. I'm willing to accept that if you just change the name of a file, it might not be the same file. You know, that's a reasonable assumption to make. So let's go underscore app. Well, that's one that says it's an app. Oh, and I need to EIR. Is that a 0?
Oh.
Maybe it doesn't check. Okay, so let's see how dirtily hacked my computer is now. So if I dump that one in, and see, I shouldn't have to do this. I'm able to, at least it kind of went to somewhere right. Okay, so I obviously have some problems, but that's possibly because I've got too many versions of Visual Studio in here and they're starting to compete against each other.
Is it because you're returning the result of the function instead of running it to the console? Because now the return value of the program will be 11, which is
An error code. Okay, I could return 1, or to return 0. You could be right. It could be that it actually executing properly. It's just so printf. I think it would have given me a different error, but we can just check that because it's worth checking.
It says the exit code, by the way, also.
correctly, please close the application. Okay. I think I've got DLL issues. Because, you know, randomly grabbing a particular DLL that's not been built for your particular distribution, and that Windows won't let me install the appropriate distribution because reasons, it would seem.
It does work sometimes.
It
Just grab a random DLL with the right name.
It would usually it usually works, honestly, but it's the problem is this is a Visual Studio system setting, so it's hard to know if it's going to be the right one. Okay, so message recommend scat. Yeah, that's just a standard overview one.
I think you have to migrate to C-Line or something instead of Visual Studio.
So try reinstalling the problem. Okay, so can you fix the DLL part 2? And yeah, okay, so there are supposedly solutions project type deal. Okay, right. Okay, family of modules. Okay, so obviously I failed to create a DLL and get it to work in this particular redistribution. I think if I tried to rebuild it in my 2013, it might be successful, right? I'll try one last thing, given that I did do a change, and I'll change this one back to the 2140 and apply, and then go OK, and then we can build, but I don't think that'll actually fix anything. No, unable to start correctly. So it's a Visual Studio, but if I'd had the right Visual Studio and I had the right redistribution runtimes, that should have then clicked and run, right? Now, the only things to kind of remember about that realistically are that in here I've got this idea of an external library, and the extern tells it, don't try and run the code immediately. This code is going to be somewhere else. And there are two files created, a lib file, which tells it where to look in the DLL, and the H file. So just as you find it when you're getting other DLLs, you'll find a lib, you'll use the lib to connect to the DLL. When I send it out to people, I send my executable and the DLL, and those two they need, and everything else is fine. Right? So in this case, I also need the Visual Studio redistributable. I think I can turn that into being a static, but I'll have to find that. But I won't make you guys watch that. I'll fix it, and I can show it working next week. Sorry, I didn't realize I was going to hit that problem.
Well, if you go back to the Stack Overflow web browser.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing to look for when you're browsing Stack Overflow is the number between the up and down arrows there. Because I don't know, this might have been mentioned.
I haven't mentioned it.
Nope.
Nope.
Because that is how many people have found that answer useful.
It's not.
And 3 is a low number.
So it may or may not have been. This hasn't been used a lot.
Nope.
And only one person voted this up as a problem.
Yeah. So that's probably not the entry in Stack Overflow you're looking for.
It may not be. Though it could be that this is such a rare thing to do that most people don't have 3 versions of Visual Studio running on their computer at the same time. A 2013, a 2015 and a 2017 version of Visual Studio causing conflicts. Yeah. They just do it cleanly where they get rid of the old ones and have the new one.
Uninstalling Visual Studio is harder than it should be.
Yeah. Okay, so have a good weekend and start working on your libraries and your code. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Sir. Sometimes.